everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Bullis Show. Today I have with me Emeigh. Now, Neil is the CEO and founder of Rayobyte, a 45-person proxy and data scaling company. Rayobyte is an award-winning proxy provider committed to reliability and ethics. They're the largest US-based proxy provider and offer a wide range of services from data center proxies to boutique data scraping. First 3 months of business during his college life, where obviously he wasn't out partying, the company made 100,000 in revenue in year one, 1.1 million in year two, and 2.9 million in year three. Fast forward to today, the revenue is growing rapidly to one of the most important product lines. Neil has grown his company by himself, entirely bootstrapped, and recently turned down an offer to sell it for $25 million. Neil, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here, and I'm sure everyone's working out what is a proxy and data scaling company. So, Neil, quickly explain that to us.
Yes, thanks for having me, Jeff. So I get asked this question a lot. I've been doing this for 9 years, and so I've kind of gotten the elevator pitch nailed down for the ordinary consumer. One of your most major use cases is when you go book a flight or book a hotel. Usually most people are going to Google Flights, Skyscanner, Booking.com, Hotels.com, you name it. Those sites, when you, the consumer, go to those sites, you're usually looking for the cheapest price in most cases. And so you see your listing and it's sorted from lowest price to highest price. Well, the way that all these companies, 𝓲𝓵𝓵, Kayak, keep going, Expedia, keep going, the way that they're getting that data is via web scraping. And some people then ask, like, oh, I would assume that they would have direct partnerships with those other companies, but those other the flight companies like a Delta or United, they're not incentivized just to hand out their data to anyone who asks for it. And so therefore the world of web scraping was built to help kind of fit in between companies' data like Delta, United, and the likes of a search engine of sorts. That's just one of many use cases anyways.
Cool. Okay, so what you're trying to do is you're trying to help people get a cheapest price because you don't want the algorithms of those companies to actually override you and give you an increasing price as you continue to search. Is that correct?
That can be true, yeah. In this case, it's more for as a consumer, we want options. We want to know, tell me the 100 hotels in this city that I can choose from. And I want to know, what are their ratings about them? What are their prices about them? Where are they located? And all these things. I want that all on one screen in front of me. If I just go to, let's say, this Hilton's website, well, then I'm not seeing other brands like a Marriott or boutique brands. And so as a consumer, I get that value of everything in front of me, like a Booking.com, for example.
Okay. So I think one of the biggest challenges for consumers is that they will use the open web. They'll go and use Google. They'll use Safari, which is actually back-ended into Google anyway. Then you've got, Bing and so on. You go there and they've got algorithms making sure that you go to where they want you to go. And as you search for the cheapest airfare, which is, I think, is a great example you used right off the bat, is that as you go to that website, in Australia it would be Qantas for an air flight, in America would be Delta, in Middle East it would be Qatar Airlines. The list goes on, right? They will know who you are, and you've kept searching, going, I can actually get them to spend $7,000 for a business class flight instead of $15,000. Oh, sorry, I want them to spend $15,000 instead of $7,000, right? So does a proxy server that is just that has scraped the web and actually is producing, almost like it sounds like you're producing honest data because it's raw. Is that correct?
That is, yeah, you start getting really deep into the technicalities of the value of where a proxy comes. So data scraping is kind of the next layer above proxies. Proxies is at the most fundamental foundational layer to help making this all happen. Above the data scraping layer, you get to your websites like a booking.com. So at the proxy layer, what a proxy is it's your IP address at home. Most people know what an IP address is. If you go on Google right now and type in, what is my IP? It'll split out this random string of numbers and it'll say, this is your IP. That identifies you online. So target companies and websites can follow you just even by your IP address, but then there's other techniques to follow you called fingerprinting that we have to evade. And so whether at the proxy layer or the scraping layer, there are all kinds of techniques to avoid being tracked and so on forth, so we can get the most clean data that we want at the end of the day.
Right. Okay, so there's another option, which is you could go incognito by clicking a button on a Google.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now that 90% of people wouldn't even know what that means.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So this is where proxy, then on incognito. So we're playing at the edges of the web, which actually benefit consumers. And for example, proxies are used, for example, in authoritarian states like China and Russia to stop people finding information around the world. Is that correct?
Yeah. People use it for privacy application, essentially, and to get around the firewalls of China and so forth.
Yeah. So if I used incognito mode on Google, would that still be tracked?
Yeah, you're right. So that's the perfect example where they claim incognito definitely has a layer of tracking prevention. But even then, as soon as you've established your browser profile in this incognito mode, websites that have gotten so advanced these days, because it's in their best interest, they want to know and they want to target you with ads ultimately at the end of the day, that even in incognito, that once you're in that one instance, they can even track you at that browser level. But the question you're asking on proxies is a good example. Even if you did everything you could at the browser level with incognito, change some settings, there's some plugins that help randomly generate some fingerprints, you still have the same IP address. And none of the plugins, none of the browsers can or would change that because there's actually a cost to using a proxy.
Right. So incognito doesn't remember my IP address, which is how they track you.
Yeah, exactly. So then it's still just really easy at the end of the day. Right.
Okay. So if you want to get the best deals on the web without algorithms from all the players, the Amazons, everyone's, the airlines, these guys have got, they've got like squillions of engineers sitting in their back room planning, designing their websites, their booking e-commerce sites. So if you really want to take advantage of getting the best prices on the web, I'm going to make it really simple here. And not be tracked, you should be using a proxy. Is that correct?
Proxy, or a more common probably consumer usage, is a VPN. They're the same thing in essence. You get a different IP address from a different location, but different technologies underneath. But yes.
Okay. So VPN is what we would call, we spell it out, that algorithm would be a virtual private network.
Yeah, right.
Yep. So Neil, what you're really about is you're trying to actually help people get the best prices for airlines, products, not have national governments track you, hunt you down, and put you in jail.
Yeah, those are big categories there, but there's tons. There's so many more leads. Lead generation is another huge part of the industry in helping get sales leads from a business side instead of the consumer side.
Right, cool. I'm just trying to put it into a sense of where, like, how come I've got these ads from all these people? Like, I went and searched, pink bikes online, and suddenly they all turn up, my feed. They turn up in Facebook. They turn up everywhere. All right, so because people might have the idea that proxies and virtual private networks are for the bad guys. The reality is it's actually to look after the good guys that are trying, and good girls, let's be, get on the diversity thing here, right? That are actually trying to make sure that they're not being tracked. They can get, good prices for products. They can actually book airline flights at the right prices instead of being ripped off. Look, I've gone to Kayak, for example, and booked a rental car, and I went, didn't these guys check this company out? Because I've turned up in this rental car in Nice in France, and it's got like a, you know, really like this little shabby hut and like a gravel road.
Yeah.
And look, you can navigate that, it's fine. But so what we have is these guys actually aren't curating, they're actually scraping the information and delivering it.
Yeah, right. And the more places they can scrape, the wider their category gets, and then the more that the consumer has to choose from ultimately.
Right. Cool. All right. Look, I I think what you're doing is actually fantastic, and it's not talked about very often, is it?
No, because of what you allude to, it's in the middle. It's in the gray. Depends on who you ask. If you ask the Hilton, they'll say that web scrapers are the scum of the earth. If you ask the Googles of the world, Google is a search engine, which the way they get the results is they're scraping. So the one of the largest companies in the world is built on scraping the entire web. If you ask the kayaks of the world, they'll say scraping is valuable. And so that's where you kind of get big, huge companies, lobbyists from both sides saying one to the other. And we just happily sit right in the middle and arbitrage between the two.
Wow. So, is there any filters you use to actually stop, uh, I suppose, yeah. So if you're going, okay, so I'm looking for good flights and suddenly turn up on a dodgy site and I buy a product and the website doesn't, it's a scam site, it's a spam site. It's like it's really not offering product at all. It takes your credit card details, takes your money, and disappears. How do you protect against that?
I would assume those companies probably have some form of automated checks to check on the legitimacy of the sites that they're listing via, are they listed on a business directory? Are there reviews online, scraped reviews, so they see, oh wow, different sites are talking about it, different authority websites are talking about it, pointing to it. It must be legitimate. And then that's also where you start seeing they build up their own internal reviews, like customers on Kayak or Booking can leave a review, and then they can say, oh wow, someone must have had a successful purchase, a successful experience, they reviewed it, therefore we can trust this listing more. And with enough data, you can start having some assurances.
Okay, so what you can do is by, even though you're still using the proxy, for example, or incognito, let's say Voxy VPN, you can go, let's go and check the reviews within that channel, the proxy channel. You go to a site and you can see, well, these guys actually are offering a good service. So, in other words, you can see everything as long as you actually are rigorous in terms of how you use the web to actually check them out. Is that correct?
If you're doing this as a consumer to check out like a scam site, yes, it'd be on you to verify if you think it's legitimate. I'm sure there's tools out there that help with that. I was answering it more from the perspective of like, how does a kayak ensure that what it lists, it's not listing a bunch of spam ultimately. So typically, well, even this, I speculate is not quite true. So you can, as a consumer, you can trust those big brands like a Kayak and Booking.com, 𝓲𝓵𝓵 to give legitimate listings. And you probably don't need to use a proxy in most cases, although I've seen cases and articles written where the same thing, they're tracking you. And what they'll do is if they know you're about to purchase or you have a certain buying pattern, what a kayak will do is if a flight is typically, let's say $100 or a rental car is $100, they'll make it $104 and they'll take that $4 margin, which if you think at the scale that they're helping facilitates, $4 is incredible. I mean, millions of transactions. Yeah.
That's
So
really
that's where
intriguing.
a proxy could provide some value there.
Right. Okay. So let's wind back now.
Yeah.
Neil, you have been doing this for 9 years. Okay, so you talk about the sort of things you were doing in your college life. So let's wind back to college, and you're in Nebraska, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So how did you get into online digital business? Because you're going from being a high school student to a college student. You're going. So what was the motivation to go, I want to start an online business?
hmm My first dollar I made, I think I was 14, maybe 15. Was online. I made my first dollar online when I was 14, 15, which I'm 30 now, so it's 15 years ago. This is at 2009. Jeez, yeah, 2009, I think it would be. So it's way back when. And the dollar I made was like writing an SEO article on Fiverr or Fiverr.com. That's a pretty big freelancing
Yep.
site. And so I was doing things in high school, well, I was even middle school at the time, of kind of in this area of SEO, internet marketing. And I just kind of kept playing with an idea after an idea after an idea. And just a lot of, I mean, I would make $100 here, or $1,000 here, or $100 here. And it wasn't until, I mean, I just tried 100 ideas, 200 probably, and until the end of my college, it was in my last semester. And that I like this one quote from Mark Cuban on Shark Tank. One time he said, every entrepreneur has luck at some point in their life. And this was my moment. I think luck or enough attempts, I don't know, one could speculate, but I tried my 199th idea that my last semester of college, because I was getting pressure from the parents naturally saying, hey, do you have a real job lined up, Neil? I'm like, oh yeah, I know, I'm working on my internet marketing stuff and my SEO stuff. And I had 3 months essentially until I graduated, and then I should have a job by then. And within that 3 months, I launched this our Proxy product, and in that 3 months, we made 100K revenue. As I said, year one was 1.1 million, and the rest is history from there.
So basically you were very switched on to creating a digital business.
Yes, very much.
So what was the inspiration for that? Because a lot of people you were actually starting to do a side hustle when you're 14. You were doing a side hustle when you're in college as well. So we're talking, a 9 to 10 year, I suppose, exploration, an adventure into how do I make money online. Is that correct?
Exactly. That was the terms I was searching, how to make money online. Yeah.
Right. So you stumbled into Proxies. You kissed a lot of frogs along the way, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because the promises and the riches of making money online go from the absurd to the ridiculous and everything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right, man. In those early days when I was 15 or so, that's when I was most susceptible, especially at that age, to just believe all this crap. And so I would buy, at the time, like internet marketing was kind of the hot thing. And there was all kinds of gurus who would post like guides, ebook guides saying, buy my guide and I'll teach you how to make $10,000 a month. And it was so convincing. I bought guide after guide after guide after guide. And 99% of them didn't make me a penny, but I still believe.
Yeah, so I totally get that. So I was a little bit older than you when I started, how do I make money? And this is the age of, it was in 2009 when I started blogging, right? So blog,
Yeah, right. Same era. Yeah.
social media is rising. We're having a ball. I really, look, I was in between jobs, code for fucking unemployed.
And so you started blogging. Yes.
I started
Those who
blogging.
can't do blog, I think, as they
Yeah.
say. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so here we are. We're like, okay, we're blogging. And I was just started writing about social media, and I became known as a social media expert in 2009, 10, 11, 12, right?
Oh,
So anyway, I ended up speaking at conferences. So the thing was, I maybe wasn't searching how to make money online, but maybe I was actually. But I started creating content, and then I ended up attracting a lot of attention, up with 5 million visitors a year within 2 or 3 years.
wow.
But there's a lot of scams online. It's like you said, you bought all these ebooks, you bought these guides, you bought courses, so the reality is, for me, I was following a curiosity. I was curious about social media. And I started making money by getting paid to go to conferences, and I started making a little bit of money consulting and paid for speaking, and I sold some ebooks. So, but I love your journey in terms of what you're trying to do, because for me, as I watched the rise of social media, they were basically stealing your audience to sell to them, and then started restricting your audience. So you actually couldn't reach them because the algorithms were designed for their maximizing their advertising and minimize for you to reach your audience.
Yeah, clicking through your links and going to your website. And
So you got into Proxies. Now I'm really intrigued is, how did you, this is 9 years ago, so we're talking 2013, 14 sort of times, right? And 15?
15, yeah, end of 15. Yeah.
Okay, this is the rise of algorithms right back then. Back then, this is where algorithms by Google, Facebook, Twitter, especially Facebook, started to rise. So you're battling what I call online visibility challenges. So how did
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So how did you grow your business out of that? Because the big guys, the global social media platforms and the search engine platforms, Google, because that's really all there is mainly. How did you break through and get attention back then? How did you get your marketing? How did you get yourself out there?
SEO, ironically enough, as you talk about search engines. The first, our brand now is Rayobyte, but our first brand was 𝓲𝓵𝓵. Terrible name in hindsight, but at the time it made sense because I was super involved with SEO. That's how I started using proxies and stuff. And as you talk about the algorithms, like back then, especially even when I started 15 years ago, SEO was a matter of posting a few comments on a blog with your link to your website, backlink for the marketers out there, and your website would go to page 1 in a night. Now Google's a little smarter than that, and they see that as spam and they don't rank you. And so I was doing things like that at scale, making backlinks at scale, and you need a lot of proxies and servers to do that. And so I knew SEO. I knew people. I was in forums, in Skype groups, and I kept running into the same problem everyone else was, which is all the proxy providers were these kind of just like sketchy dudes in some questionable countries that you'd be like, do I really want to be using their services from this guy who won't talk to me, and he has just like a handle online, and they'd go offline and they just wouldn't care about it. So it was just one of those like pain points. I was like, okay, well, this gotta be a better way. Let me try. I knew nothing about it, knew nothing about system administration, didn't know anything about proxies. And I just posted a job on Elance at the time, now Upwork. I said, I need someone to make a proxy for me. And some freelancer said, yeah, I'll do it. And then I just went to my SEO groups and I just said, hey guys, I got proxies now. You want to buy from me? And they're like, well, we're not loyal to them and they kind of suck, so why not? And it just kind of took off from there. So the name 𝓲𝓵𝓵 was at least resonant to the early customers that got me off the ground. And then we kind of expanded into different markets soon thereafter.
Yeah, look, I totally get SEO. So we're very focused on SEO. I just create a lot of content. I got a lot of inbound links. I got links from New York Times, Forbes, Entrepreneurship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So I just create a lot of content, and at the end of the day, I built Google authority. So I think we've got a authority ranking of about 81, 82.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible.
Which is good. All right. So it's basically like building an asset, really, isn't it? So it's a digital, I call it a digital asset, which a lot of people just don't get. They get onto Instagram, they want to be an influencer, and they just post a lot of shit. And
you don't know anything.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what I call it superficial content, not what I call content that actually changes people's lives. Might change their dress, but not their lives. So I'm intrigued by this. So were you very technical?
Yes, my degree is computer science, but I'll be the first to say, not to speak ill of I love my teachers, but in my opinion, old school education, this is my soapbox, old school education and the current university systems What I learned in computer science, what we were taught, and the theories and principles and etc., was nothing than just doing 6 months of my own program. I've been programming since I was 15, and like what I would just learn doing real world things was more than I learned in 4 years of college. And so yeah, I had the technical background, but as soon as what proxies are, it requires more of a not a programming, a developer. It requires system administration, now called DevOps these days. And I didn't know anything about that. And so that's more like in your command line Linux. I was like, I'm a Windows guy. And so I posted that job on Elance Upwork. I was technical enough to know how to communicate what I needed. I was technical enough to know how to manage technical people, but I didn't know how to write the code or anything. So from day one of the company, I haven't really wrote code ever since in the last 9 years.
Cool. But I totally agree with you about education because I did an education degree, as in became a teacher for 5 or 6 years.
Okay, sorry if I insulted you.
No,
I hear you agree with
no,
what
no.
it is.
You don't insult me at all because the reality is that you actually learn by doing, not by sitting in a classroom.
Exactly.
Right. End of story. So no, we're singing from the same hymn sheet here, Neil.
Yeah.
So the reality for me is that a lot of the, teaching and curriculum, even for high school, even in universities, set from on high by people that have actually never left school.
Yeah, academia. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Theory. Yeah.
So I don't speak ill of them, and they can actually go and write lovely books and everything else, but actually have they done something that really has been tested in the fire of reality and business, and especially in the digital world, because the digital world has really moved us forward quite quickly, hasn't it?
Yeah, right. Rapidly than schools can keep up with.
Yeah. Yep. So for me, totally on the same page. I really want, okay, you can have all the ideas in the world. You can go to get, 2, 3, 4 degrees, get a PhD. PhD is just an acronym for called Pile Higher and Deeper. And I'm sorry, professors out there who have a PhD. I have no disrespect, but actually, what we need to do is we need to go out in the real world and actually try and make a difference by doing stuff, building stuff, and you've done that. Okay, so tell us about how Proxy works, your product. How do you make money out of proxies? Do you sell a service as a monthly subscription? Tell us how you would use your proxy. And then the other question would be, how do you find your customers? So we can do it either way. How do you find your customers? How do you make money out of your product? Because we're talking to digital entrepreneurs, wannabes that actually go, I really would like to do something online. I don't know what to do. I've got a computing science degree. And what you've done is, just raw and real and fantastic. So you said that you discovered your customers through blazing SEO, which is originally your first business. So how do you make money out of Rayobyte proxies product?
Yeah. So there's two primary products we offer. There's again the foundational infrastructure layer is a proxy, where we lease one IP address for a monthly fee ultimately.
Yep.
And most people at the scale, we have a minimum of a 5 purchase quantity. And so what we're trying to target is people doing larger, our main target audience is people who are doing data scraping. So we have our enterprise customers who will have 50,000 IP addresses. That way they can go scrape, let's say, my example of Hilton, they can go scrape that Hilton site and rotate between 50,000 IPs so Hilton doesn't see just one IP address loading all their. And so then when you go up a layer, there's the scraping layer, which we also sell, which is an API that people, companies, developers, it's pretty simple, where you tell us what URL you want to get scraped, and we provide back the HTML of an unblocked and clean page ultimately. And again, customers at this, we have some customers doing hundreds of millions a month of pages. Particularly the greatest industry right now is e-commerce by far. People want to know what the price of products are. People want to know what the reviews of products are. People want to know if the items in stock. People want to know what the shipping options. People want to know what related items are. And they're just consuming, these companies are just consuming this data at such high scale to then build in their own analytics models and so on and so forth. And that's just charged per scrape. So like one scrape costs like 0.0018 pennies per scrape at the most expensive tier.
Right. Okay. So where's your target market then really in terms of, is it larger? Is it enterprise? Is it
No,
e-commerce?
we're kind of doing well, I wouldn't say rebranding, but I think it's extreme enough to maybe call it that, but repositioning as a company. In the last 2 or 3 years, I made the mistake of trying to be everything to everyone. When I first started the company for the first years, I didn't know anything. I didn't really have a mentor. I didn't know anything about business. And I was just kind of just doing it because it was fun. I was learning, money was coming in. It was like, yeah, this is cool. This is fun. Let's do this. Let's do this. And then I started reading too many, guru books, people from academia, people, not, again, like people haven't built a business writing books. I'm like, oh, those ideas make sense. Let me go implement these ideas. And so in our middle period of our company, leading up to like now-ish, I tried being, I don't know how to say it, everything to everyone. Our company, our brand just kind of became bleh. We looked like everyone else. And so we repositioned ourselves recently to not try targeting enterprise. We're just letting them go. Yeah, there's a lot of money there, but I personally just don't like enterprise sales cycles. They're months and months and months, and then they don't close, and they have different requirements. And so we're targeting more towards the SMB consumer market now these days, particularly around e-commerce scraping, but scraping broadly, the e-commerce scraping makes up probably the biggest.
Right. So your tier and your pricing and how much per month will that typically look? Is it like, tell us about that.
Yeah, like, well, 100 IPs, 100 proxies would be around $150 a month, for example. That can get up to 50,000. You can get down to 80 cents an IP and anywhere in between.
Okay. So what sort of things would a company that wants to use Proxy, what are they wanting to do?
I give the example of e-commerce. We've talked about flights. Another big one that's kind of applicable to a lot of businesses is just lead data. Scraping, I mean, you have to get creative, but scraping websites. Let's say you're a recruiting agency. Okay, you help people find talent. Well, you can pay for like a LinkedIn recruiter, which gets pretty expensive, one, and two, they don't have like real-time notifications of certain positions coming up. And then what if you also want data from Indeed and then from, well, Monsters and all of the one, but there's so many job boards and regional job boards as well too. So as a recruiter, it would be valuable to me if I had real-time updates of, let's say I have, let's say a developer that I'm trying to place. It's the opposite way. And I want to place him in a job. Well, I'd want real-time updates of all job postings that say, hey, we're looking for a developer with these skill sets. Well, that's where scraping comes in. The scraping is a verb. So the software loads Indeed, let's say once a day for a certain search term, developer. And then if anything pops up, it would just notify the recruiter, hey, there's 5 new listings today. Go check it out. And then you have this constant feed without having to do anything.
Right. So basically you're automating lead generation.
Yeah, exactly. And there's Google Maps is another big use case where when you go to Google, you type in restaurants in New York, it shows your whole listing of, I mean, there's just, 100,000 restaurants. Well, you can use software to basically get the phone numbers, the websites. You can even go visit the website, get their social media, get their email, put that all into an Excel file. And now you have 100,000. If I'm let's say a food distributor or a food software that I'm trying to sell the latest POS system, I now have 100,000 contacts that I can then input into my outreach software or otherwise and do that instead of manually going one site to one site.
Well, yeah, and that's basically building lead generation at scale, isn't it? So that's what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So so basically you can use that to generate, feed a spreadsheet, which then you can use to do outreach out of doing Google ads or something, or Facebook ads. Is that what you're saying as well?
Yeah, you could. However, people would want to feed their sheet from there. They could be doing their own email software. They could import the emails into Facebook, which can allow you to target those emails. Then, yeah.
Very cool. So, so basically, you're trying to give some attention to the small guy. I've sort of help the small guys beat the big guys. Is that right?
Yeah, a bit. It gives you a leg up if you take the time to try automating some things. You're never going to beat a big company by manually doing the same thing as them. So you got to be creative, you got to be innovative, and identify as you're doing your day-to-day business processes, or even things that you haven't identified yet, like the recruiter needing a real-time feed. Ask yourself, what if I had a software that just did this for me and sent me this, or did this action for me every day, like clockwork, for day after day, week after week, month after month, and you can get a competitive edge against your competitors.
Yeah. So, are you seeing the proxy industry growing quite a lot?
Yeah, too much so, if you ask me. It's when I started the company, there was probably, as I said, there was this kind of like some shady guys in basements somewhere, I assumed.
In these,
And
in these,
there's probably, yeah, exactly, no, exactly, yeah. And there was probably maybe 4 or 5 total companies that you could like kind of buy from, and now there's still like, it's still a relatively small industry in this terms. There's maybe like 100 legitimate companies, but 100's enough that it's commoditized it to the point where because we're at an infrastructure layer, there's little that can differentiate between one company and the next, besides things like good service and your brand and your values. And we have to try connecting with customers in that way, which, it's just like Nike versus Adidas. It's a challenge.
yeah. So, I mentioned before your target audience. So, is it more providing information to e-commerce companies, for example? Like it could be, a cycling website that wants to actually communicate with people that want to buy bikes and bike accessories, for example. Like, is it more? It's just right across the board in e-commerce. Is that your main market?
Yeah, if you use the example of like a bike shop owner, where I'd be like thinking like, how could that bike shop owner use data scraping to help their business? One thing would probably be something like scraping social media or other maybe like classified listings sites, or I mean anywhere you could find data where people either selling bike parts or selling bikes, and or looking for, like, I'm looking for this bike. And then again, day after day after day, if you found some sites that show that, like looking for bike, you could now even automate the outreach. Hey, we're a bike store in your city. We have a great collection of bikes. Why don't you just give us a call? And you don't have to think about it, and just does it on repeat. So yeah, when you ask that, like, for small business owners, the ones who probably get the most value would be companies who are already like a data-based company, who, let's say they have a product that helps. Let's say you, the consumer, want to start an Amazon product business. You want to sell, I don't know, a cup or something on Amazon. There's a lot of businesses that have spun now that offer you Amazon analytics. Like, it tells you what cups are selling best, what colors of cups should you sell, what kind of material should those cups be. They show charts and widgets and so on. For those companies are probably our prime target, because they're the ones who need to be scraping Amazon, all the competitors, to say, okay, we see that blue is the most dominant color. That's because they scraped a million listings to be able to determine that. Yeah.
Okay, so next question, because I'm curious about intersection of AI with marketing and humanity. Is AI helping you or not helping you? And how do you use AI if you are using it?
I would have thought that AI would have helped us faster than what we're seeing right now. And I think the reason it's not yet is because AI, to create your own models, your own AI models, ML, that's not to the mainstream yet. it's moving in that direction. Meta has their open source AI, so then you can take that open source and then you can start building your own models with that. And to build a model, you need data.
You need data.
But
Yep.
right. Our educational system, there aren't enough AI engineers and ML engineers out there to be building this for companies. So therefore, small SMBs and even enterprise companies, they're not building their own models yet, so they're not coming to us. But that's the direction. That's the direction where the world's gonna go. People are gonna be building. It's gonna be so easy to build your own model. It'll just say, just give me whatever data you want. I will structure it. I will figure out. I'll make sense of it. Just feed me data. And that's where I think scraping will come in, where we'll just start. You go to a website, our scrapers do. We get the HTML, the full HTML, which includes your stock, your price, your colors, etc. You feed that whole HTML source code into this AI engine of yours, and it just makes sense of it for you. I think it's just a matter of time before it gets there, but we don't quite see it yet.
In other words, if you had a lot of data and information, okay, so would that be traffic coming to your website? In other words, the IP addresses that are coming, and you can identify who they are and then make sense of that to help you in terms of identify where the opportunity, who's actually looking for you?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Can you ask that again?
Okay, what I
Make
mean
sure I
by that
understand.
is like, okay, so let's say I've got 2 million visitors a year, they're coming to my website. Would a proxy data scraping help me identify who's coming to my website and then make sense of?
No, not. It's more on the reverse. So when someone uses proxies or scraping, we're going to another site. So literally, like we scrape. Let's say we literally scrape a Hilton Hotels website or Amazon or Walmart or something. So
Okay,
we're going to their site and then grabbing all the information we see on the page, and then we send all that information to our customer. And so
okay,
our customer is just sitting there with an AI model in the future, and it'll just say, give me any data you can give. And then we're just feeding it. And their model is just trained to make sense of what's being fed to it.
okay. So what you're saying is that you're going, this is where I think my target audience is, and so go and scrape it for me, and then let's market to that by using that information.
Yeah, from a lead gen perspective, you could,
Okay,
yeah. If you think of like, well, I mean, one interesting case is like Crunchbase. Crunchbase shows all company information. It shows which companies have raised money. So if I'm a VC, if I'm a consultant, I mean, so many different fields that could value knowing when a company has raised money. Well, now you can just scrape Crunchbase, scrape. Tell me who's raised money to me, and then just feeds that back to a consultant who then could reach out. Hi, I'm so-and-so. I see you just raised money. Can I offer my services to you? And you're getting that fed to you in real time.
okay, cool. So in terms of what you're doing, you've obviously learned a lot along the way. So you started with like how to make money online was maybe one of your first searches you did back when you're 14, 15 years old. So today, what have you learned along the way in terms of creating an online business? What would be your top tips as someone, like, not saying trying to create a proxy server business or proxy business, in terms of building a side hustle or a business in the online world, what have you learned that you could tell our audience? In other words, some of your 3 or 4 top tips.
3 or 4. Wow, I'm just like going like whoosh, 9 years. So stay authentic. I painfully learned that. I tried to be someone I am not. I tried the company to be something it was not by thinking we're, professional people who target enterprise companies. And it's just like, I'm not that. I was like, I just want to talk to a consumer who pays me $2 a month, and I enjoy that. I don't care. I don't need a $2 million contract. I need $2. So remain authentic. Be authentic to who you are and what company you're trying to build. 2, what you're building, you should be very passionate about. We've tried spinning off other verticals in our space because proxies are at the infrastructure layer. And so there's many verticals we could spin off to. And I realized we were spinning off. I don't even know why. Is this more like a shiny object syndrome as an entrepreneur? My fault. And so I distracted the company going here and here and here and here. And And so I use the word focus carefully. I've learned a lot what focus means to me. I don't want to stymie innovation, which is what we've done the last few years. We try to be just too bureaucratic and stay our lane. But early on, we were just going all over the place. So staying focused to what you're passionate about, I think is really important. If I had to think of 3 or 4 others, culture is a cliched answer that what I've learned about culture in the last 2 years, a lot. We lost half our leadership team in turnover last year. And that was a culture shift that I knew needed to happen. And what I learned about the word culture, you can read about it, you can go to conferences about it, you can go to your webinars about it, but you don't know it. It's something you know in yourself. You can't logically understand culture. It's an emotional and even spiritual way to understand who is our company, how is it a reflection of me, who are the people here, do we share the same vision, do we have the same character, do we share the same value system? And you should spend logical time writing down, okay, yeah, I think this person does, this person, but for me, it's just clicked in the last 2 years of just asking those questions often. Well, what is this? What am I sure? Is this the right company? Is this what I'm trying to build? And it just asked that question enough, and I eventually felt it. And now I feel it. And so, to any entrepreneur trying to start out there, don't be hard on yourself that it may not like click, or maybe you think it's clicking and it's not working. Just keep asking the question, and eventually you'll feel it yourself, I believe.
That's really cool. Because I interviewed the guy that actually rescued Harley-Davidson in the USA, a guy called Ken Schmidt.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. What did he have to say about it?
Yeah, well,
Because Harley's obviously a cultural icon.
Yeah, it's very cultural. And he also it's Harley-Davidson is very visceral. In other words, you're at a set of stoplights and you've got a Harley-Davidson next to you and they're blipping the throttle and they're making a noise, right?
Yeah.
And that's very cool. And I've got a Jaguar F-Type and I drive with the windows open and I blip the throttle and I'm on the paddles and I'm having fun listening to the noise of my car, right?
Yeah.
So, and when you're trying to reach your audiences, so what's the noise you're trying to make? And it was really fascinating. And you got to ask questions like at a conference, you're going, okay, so who's your biggest competitor? He said, golfers. And the CEO was asking that, going, why the fuck are you asking about golfers? He said, well, I'm asking someone to buy my bike and spend a weekend riding. In other words, they are using the bike, they're using the weekend to actually escape a bad marriage, being bored, whatever it is, right? So,
Right.
So making a noise is about being noticed. Okay, one. Number 2 is, so he actually said to them, he said, you need to write down 5 keywords that actually describe what you are about. And some of those keywords were freedom, adventure, right? And essentially belonging to a tribe as well. So it was really fascinating in terms of trying to get the essence of building those keywords to everything in your messaging you're talking about, right? So
yeah.
It
and that's
was,
what if I may, I'm resonating so much, because when I talk about, there was our internal culture that had shifted, but then our external, and I kept saying we tried being everything to everyone. We pulled up our website and compared it to our top 10 competitors. It was just like a copy and paste. We're all doing the exact same thing. And if you go to our website now today, it's night and day different, because it returns back to who we are, one, and two, the noise we're trying to make. We're trying to say like, hey, screw the corporate hoo-ha that everyone else is trying to do. If you want to work with a company that values human relationships, come work with us. If you want some boring transactional robots to work with, go work with them. We don't want your business. And it's just like a period. And we're going to attract the people who want that. And then the other people are like, ooh, I don't know, that's a little great. I don't want to work with them. And I tried working with them for way too long over the last years because I wanted as much money as possible. But I believe that what it created is we're everything to everyone, which means we were nothing to nobody. Now we are something to somebody.
Yeah.
And those 6 words really, yeah, stick with me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a book that's actually quite affected me, and from the reality is that he wanted to create a tribe. And he started at, inviting people to have donuts and coffee at the local Harley-Davidson agency. Then they brought their friends. Then they created, not gangs, because that's what the problem was with Harley-Davidson, was gangs, but create people that want to go and ride together. And then they talk to everyone else. So it's like this cohort of people that want freedom, they want adventure, they want to be belonging to someone. And it was fascinating, and it really resonated with me. And so that's why I was asking, like,
Yeah.
what's the culture? How does it affect? And when you're selling an information product versus a Harley Davidson motorbike, I still believe that you can make a noise within that as well. So, and that's the fun, actually, trying to just discover and unearth that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So I want to ask you one final question, Neil.
Yes.
So you're a little bit younger than me. You've obviously been exploring life. You've been at college. You've followed a beautiful lady to the other side of the world, from Nebraska to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So what brings you deep joy? What would you do every day if you actually weren't paid for it?
Easy. When you talk about the cohorts of customers, I've finally aligned my interest to where I want to take the company. And that it's kind of 2 words, but they can be interpreted as one, which is learning and curiosity. And there's a psychological test by 𝓦𝓱𝓪𝓽, 𝓬𝓫, the guy who wrote Flow, the book Flow. And there's a website called 𝓵𝓮𝓪𝓻𝓷. So I would encourage any entrepreneur, especially, to go take this test. It takes 10 minutes, and it tells you what your virtues are as a person based on different questions.
So which one's that?
It's called the 𝓵𝓮𝓪𝓻 Character Strengths Test. I believe that's what it's called. And there's a book about it, and there's a huge American. There's like the top American positive psychology experts wrote this book together, and really great. But then they created this online tool to create this test, and I've taken this test maybe 4 or 5 times over the last 6, 7 years. And it's always consistently, because they separate curiosity and learning in different buckets, but those are always in my top like 3 or 4, and always at different points in my life when different things are going on. I take the test, and still those 2 remain at the top. And so what I want Rayobyte to represent is not a proxy company, not a scraping company. I don't want to attract customers who just need a transaction for proxies and scraping. I want to work with customers and employees who want to learn and be curious with the world.
Yep.
And I want to build products that fit that mark.
Love it. Be curious and keep learning.
Yeah.
Totally get that. That's for me, one of my, I suppose, I'm a fanboy of Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero's Journey.
Yeah, sure.
And I say this time and time again, too many times, but he had a saying that none of us really have a purpose that's actually built in. We just actually have, he said, just follow your bliss. In other words, lean into your curiosity until it becomes compelling. And then it becomes an obsession that will take you everywhere.
Yeah. Well said. Goosebumps. Just feeling that and putting myself in that.
So, mate, I follow my curiosity. I don't follow the money anymore.
Yeah, as a host, it shows. I mean, you're learning from people. I love it. I admire that, and putting yourself out there, and just asking questions about topics you may not know anything about.
Yeah,
I assume you didn't know much about proxies before today.
I knew enough to actually ask you a few questions. That's all I knew.
Sure,
But yeah,
sure.
but for me, I'm as curious as shit.
Yeah, yeah. You're a great host because of that.
So I spend half my day reading and
Oh, wow.
and I take notes and then I write, I journal. And
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like I'm not doing anything because I'm actually just sitting on my ass reading. And I sit in the most beautiful sunroom at the back of our home and I read and I take notes and then I write out of that. And I read the most fabulous book recently called Poor Charlie's Almanac, which is Charlie Munger, the right-hand man of Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, which is worth just a few $billion.
Yeah. I know it's in my backyard in Nebraska, by the way.
That's right.
That's yeah.
And I wrote a post recently called A Secret Guilty Pleasure, and that secret guilty pleasure is actually reading. And I feel like when I'm doing that, I'm having way too much fun. And I'm learning way too much, and I'm actually wasting my time. That's how I feel. But the reality is, out of that, you, by being curious about life and reflecting, is you can live a considered life, which actually I think is pretty amazing. And it sounds to me like you've lived an amazingly considered life. You haven't followed the pathway most followed by most. You like the guys, the Knights of the Holy Grail, right? They went into the forest where there was no path in front of them, and that's what you've chosen, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thank you, Jeff.
you've created your own path. And I would encourage everyone who's listening is your power is in your individualities, and then just create your own path. And don't listen to the naysayers. Tell them to piss off because
Yeah.
your genius lies within you, and genie means locked within, right?
Mm.
And you've done that, which is pretty amazing, right? So, yeah. But Charlie
Thank you.
Munger has been described by his children as two legs sticking out of a book.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that.
So, mate, it's been, and I say mate in Australia, you say buddy in America. I don't know what they say
Yeah,
in the Netherlands. What do they say in the
me neither.
Netherlands?
Not yet, anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure, buddy, to actually have a chat and discover more about proxies. I'm a little bit wiser by speaking to a curious dude that has moved from Nebraska to the Netherlands, and that is brave and obviously curious. So it's fantastic.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
So thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, mine too.